The Galactic Council chamber, a vast dome etched with the star maps of 1,000 worlds, was silent, except for the echo of a gavel striking the ancient stone podium. In the center, bound by laser shackles, stood a human diplomat, his uniform stark against the ornate surroundings. General Carter Blake watched from Earth's command center, the live feed flickering on a vast screen that covered the entire north wall. The room was dark, lit only by the glow of monitors displaying data and distant star systems. Around him his staff stood in grave silence, their expressions a mix of shock and simmering fury. The Council's lead representative, a towering figure with skin like molten silver, spoke in a voice that resonated through the translation device. For crimes against the sovereign territories of the Galactic Council, we hereby sentence this human to death by fire. The alien's words were cold, its eyes devoid of empathy. Blake's jaw tightened as he watched the diplomat's defiant stance, his head held high, even as the executioners approached with their torches. The room around Blake felt colder, a stark contrast to the flames that now engulfed the screen. "Lieutenant, status report on all fleet positions," Blake commanded, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions. A young officer, his face pale but composed, quickly relayed the coordinates of their interstellar armada, ready and waiting for orders. "Prepare for immediate deployment. We're at war," Blake stated, his decision echoing with finality through the command center. Murmurs of assent rippled through the room as officers moved into action, the strategy for a retaliatory strike forming swiftly. As the feed from the Council cut off, the screen now showed only the starry expanse they would soon traverse. Blake turned to his second-in-command, a seasoned veteran whose calm was a quiet anchor in the brewing storm. "Mason, ensure the comm lines to the Senate are open. They'll want confirmation we're responding decisively." "Understood, General. I'll also coordinate with the logistics team. Our response needs to be fast, but it can't be reckless," Mason replied, his words deliberate, reflecting the weight of their next actions. Blake nodded, his gaze returning to the star map. Each point of light represented a world, a battlefront, a place where the lines between diplomacy and war blurred into obscurity. As his crew rallied around him, the weight of command settled firmly on his shoulders. "We strike with precision. We do not falter. For Earth, for humanity," Blake announced to his team, his voice a resonant command that carried both the burden of command and the resolve of a leader shaped by years of peace, now shattered in a single incendiary moment. The war for humanity's place in the cosmos had begun. As General Carter Blake's declaration resonated through the command center, officers scrambled to implement the war orders with a mixture of urgency and precision. The swift, near-silent footsteps of the crew reverberated slightly on the metal floor, a stark contrast to the usual quietude that governed the space. Outside, the darkness of early evening cloaked the Earth's Defense Fleet headquarters. The cool night air was occasionally disrupted by the distant roar of engines as transports and fighters underwent rapid deployment preparations. Mason, Blake's right hand, was busy coordinating with the Armada. His voice, crisp and authoritative, directed the fleet's mobilization over the communication channels, ensuring each squadron knew their rendezvous points across the void. In the strategy room, holographic displays cast a soft glow, illuminating the focused faces of tactical advisors. Charts and trajectories formed a dynamic tapestry of potential battle zones, with blinking lights indicating the live statuses of ships across the galaxy. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the tang of electronic equipment, providing a familiar comfort amidst the rising tension. Blake stood over the central table, his eyes scanning the holograms as he absorbed the flow of information. "Adjust the 5th Squadron's path. They're too exposed to the Orion Belt's asteroid field," he instructed a junior officer, who nodded and swiftly keyed in the adjustments, his fingers a blur over the holographic interface. In the background, the subtle chatter of analysts piecing together the last known positions of enemy forces created a continuous undercurrent of activity. The tactile sensation of the cool, smooth metal of the command table under his palms grounded Blake as he formulated his strategies. Every so often, the sharp scent of ink from printed reports being handed off filled the air, signaling updates from intelligence units. "General, all first wave squadrons report ready to jump to hyperspace on your command," reported a communications officer, her voice steady, yet filled with the gravity of the message she delivered. Blake turned, giving her a brief nod of acknowledgement, his face set in determination. "Communicate to all units. Maximum readiness. Launch in T-minus 20 minutes. No delays," Blake ordered, his voice echoing slightly in the high-ceilinged room. The subtle buzz of energy that his words ignited was palpable as officers and crew members responded with renewed vigor, their tasks orchestrated not just by duty, but by a shared sense of purpose. At the viewport, Blake watched as the massive warships powered up, their surfaces gleaming under the moonlight filtering through the atmosphere. The deep thrum of the ship's engines gearing up for launch was felt more than heard, a vibration through the soles of his boots. He tasted the metallic tang in the air, a byproduct of the powerful energy shields activating around the ships. Turning to face his team, Blake's expression was resolute. "This isn't just about retaliation. It's about securing our future. Make no mistake, we're not just defending human territory. We're defending human dignity and our right to exist among the stars." As the final preparations were checked and the fleet stood ready, the stillness of the night was a stark canvas against which humanity's resolve was set to be tested. The war had indeed begun, and with it, a new chapter in human history was being written, not with words, but with will and warfare. As the Earth's defense fleet carved a path through the star-studded tapestry of space, General Carter Blake convened the War Council aboard the flagship. The vast conference room, where the fate of humanity was deliberated, resonated with a quiet intensity, the starkness of its metallic surfaces reflecting the grim faces of its occupants. The gentle clink of medallions against military uniforms provided a soft, rhythmic undertone as council members assembled around a massive obsidian table. The table itself, a dark expanse mirroring the void outside, displayed holographic projections of galactic sectors and potential battle lines. These glowed with an eerie luminescence, casting ghostly blues and greens across the somber assembly. Let's not mince words. The Galactic Council has not just declared a diplomat expendable, they've declared war on all of humanity, Blake started, his voice cutting sharply through the murmur of uneasy shifts and whispers. His statement hung in the air, heavy as the gravity of a neutron star, pulling the full attention of every officer present. Commander Jens Holm, the fleet's chief strategist, leaned forward, his features hardened by strategic resolve. "Our initial strikes must be precise. We need to cripple their supply lines and isolate their outposts before they can rally a counteroffensive," he suggested, tapping the map where lines converged on a small but crucial star system. The room filled with the subtle scent of anxiety and determination as advisors and tacticians absorbed the weight of their responsibility. The faint taste of iron lingered on their tongues, a vestige of adrenaline that no amount of recycled air could erase. "Agreed, but we can't afford to stretch our forces too thin." "What's the status of our alliances?" Blake queried, his gaze piercing the room like the beams of the distant suns that lined their flight path. "We have tentative agreements with the Terebian cluster. Their fleet isn't large, but it's agile and could provide the flanking support we need," responded Admiral Liao, whose experience with interstellar diplomacy was unparalleled. His voice was smooth, almost soothing, contrasting with the starkness of the discussion. As they strategized, the soft whoosh of the air recycling system filled the background, a constant reminder of the ship's life-sustaining bubble amidst the inhospitable cosmos. The room's atmosphere thickened with the heat of bodies and electronics, making the cool touch of the table's surface a silent comfort to those who rested their hands upon it. A younger officer, Lieutenant Granger, hesitantly interjected, "Should we consider opening a dialogue with the Yorick Confederacy? Their influence could sway smaller systems to join our cause." His suggestion, soft as the glow of a distant star, sparked a flurry of contemplative nods and murmurs. Blake considered this, his eyes narrowing slightly as he peered at the star maps. "Make it so, Lieutenant. Every ally counts. But make it clear, we are not begging for scraps. We are forging a shield against tyranny." The council members nodded, their resolve solidifying like ice forming in the cold vastness of space. As they dispersed to set their parts of the plan into motion, the lingering echo of their movements whispered across the room like the distant rumble of thunder signaling an impending storm. In the silence that followed, General Blake stood alone for a moment, staring out at the swirling cosmos displayed on the screen. His reflection superimposed over the stars seemed to stand at the helm of not just a ship, but of humanity itself, steering through the darkest night with only the faint light of distant hopes guiding him. Under the pallor of distant suns, the Earth's defense fleet surged forward, a silvery specter gliding through the cosmic sea. General Carter Blake watched from the command deck of the flagship as the first ships engaged their hyperdrive, leaving trails of ionized particles that glittered like cosmic dust in their wake. The vibrational thrum of the ship settling into travel velocity resonated through the hull, felt more than heard, a silent herald of the coming storm. Inside the flagship, the air was tinged with the sharp scent of electric discharge, a byproduct of the powerful energy shields being raised around the colossal vessel. As the fleet departed Earth's orbit, the mood among the crew was a tapestry of anticipation and apprehension. The distant clanks of machinery and the soft padding of boots on metal floors filled the passageways as personnel moved to their battle stations, their routines a dance choreographed by months of training. In the mess hall, the taste of strong coffee mingled with the undercurrent of recycled air, a bitter reminder of the long journey ahead. Conversations were subdued, the crew's voices a mixture of resolve and worry, reflecting the gravity of their mission. Lieutenant Granger found himself among these voices, his earlier suggestion now part of their strategic maneuvering, adding a weight to his shoulders that was new and formidable. "Keep your heads up," Blake said as he passed through the compartments, his presence bolstering the spirits of his crew. His words, simple yet powerful, cut through the underlying tension like a beacon. Each nod in response was a silent vow to uphold their duty. Approaching the navigation bridge, the gentle glow of starlight streaming through the viewport cast long shadows across the floor, creating a play of light and darkness that mirrored the uncertainty of their path. The navigator adjusted the coordinates, his hand steady despite the enormity of their task, steering the ship not just through space but through the fine line between chaos and order. "General, all ships report ready for the jump to hyperspace," reported Admiral Liao, his voice steady, a rock amidst the swirling currents of anxiety. Blake nodded, his gaze fixed on the viewport where the stars awaited their dance with destiny. "Initiate the jump on my mark, now!" Blake commanded. The word was a drop that caused a ripple through the vast ocean of space, the fleet responding as a single entity. The transition into hyperspace was smooth, the stars stretching into lines as they entered the tunnel of light, a metaphorical plunge into the deep end of their cosmic pool. As the fleet disappeared from the normal fabric of space, a silence fell over the command deck, a reflective pause that was both an end and a beginning. In this momentary stillness, Blake felt the weight of history pressing upon him, each decision a thread woven into the tapestry of humanity's legacy. Turning away from the viewport, Blake's eyes met those of his crew, each pair reflecting a fragment of his own resolve. "This is it," he murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. "We're the shield and the sword. Let's make sure history remembers us kindly." With the fleet now streaking across the hidden currents of hyperspace, their journey towards the unknown had truly begun, each member a sentinel in the night, guarding not just their homes but the very idea of home itself. Emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the Kitaro Nebula, the fleet materialized like a phantom apparition from the myths of old, a silvery array against the backdrop of swirling cosmic gases that painted the blackness with strokes of neon blue and jade green. General Carter Blake stood at the forefront of the flagship's command deck, his eyes reflecting the nebula's eerie luminescence as he surveyed the formation of his ships. The transition from the blur of hyperspace to the stark, silent expanse of the nebula was marked by the soft hiss of pressure adjustments within the ship. Outside, the stark silence of space enveloped the fleet, the visual spectacle of the nebula offering no hint of the ambient noises one might expect in an atmospheric environment. "Report," Blake commanded, his voice echoing slightly in the hushed command deck. "Sir, sensors are picking up anomalous readings. It appears we have unidentified objects at the outer rim of our formation," replied Lieutenant Granger, his tone conveying both caution and curiosity. The crew leaned in, their attention fixed on the sensor displays, which flickered with the outlines of potential threats or potential mysteries. "Visuals now," Blake ordered crisply. The main screen flickered, then displayed the grainy image of space debris, or so it seemed at first glance. The debris moved with an unusual synchronicity that belied random motion, more like a school of celestial fish than the remnants of a shattered planetoid. "Enhance that?" Blake said, squinting at the screen. The image sharpened, revealing that the debris was actually a formation of small, sleek crafts, their designs unlike any known to human or allied databases. "Their configuration it's almost artistic," murmured a young ensign, his voice a mix of awe and trepidation. Blake didn't take his eyes off the screen. "Artistic but organized. Prepare for possible engagement," he instructed, his voice the crack of a whip that sent a ripple of urgency through the room. No sooner had the order been given than the unidentified crafts shifted formation, aligning themselves into what could unmistakably be interpreted as an offensive stance. The crew tensed, the taste of adrenaline sharp on their tongues, the air filling with the electric anticipation of impending action. Suddenly, the ship shuddered lightly, a soft reminder from the cosmos that despite their advanced technology, they were still at the mercy of larger forces. The nebulous gases, a visual marvel, now seemed to thicken, obscuring sensory readings and creating a cloak of uncertainty around the fleet. "Shields up, weapons to standby. Let's not be caught off guard," Blake directed, his command slicing through the rising murmur of his crew. The tension in the command deck was palpable, the officers' senses heightened to the point where even the faintest shift in the light felt like a harbinger of things to come. Blake remained a steadfast presence, his gaze fixed on the unfolding scenario, a captain not just navigating through space, but through the fog of uncertainty that this new threat presented. As the mysterious crafts began their slow advance, the subtle scent of ozone wafted through the command deck, a byproduct of the shields powering to full strength. In the cold vastness of space, encased in the belly of a warship surrounded by the unknown, the human fleet stood ready, a sentinel in the silent abyss, guarding against the unseen and the yet-to-be-understood. The mysterious crafts advanced, their movements calculated and unnerving, like predators circling prey. General Carter Blake watched, his expression unreadable, as the distance between the unknown ships and the human fleet shrank with each passing second. A palpable tension gripped the command deck. The air was thick, laden with the metallic scent of electronic anticipation as officers awaited orders. The soft murmur of worried whispers filled the gaps between the strategic commands issued from Blake's lips. "Keep formation tight. I want cross-checks on all defensive systems," Blake ordered, his voice a firm anchor amidst the rising tide of anxiety. A young technician, her fingers dancing rapidly over the holographic interface, replied without lifting her gaze, "All systems optimal, General. We're as ready as we'll ever be." Without warning, a brilliant flash erupted from the leading unidentified craft. It was not an attack, but a communication, a beam of light carrying a data stream, piercing the darkness and silence of space. The unexpected act of communication was more disarming than a barrage of missiles would have been. "Intercept and decode," Blake snapped, the intrigue now as palpable as the apprehension that gripped his crew. Moments later, the data began to unravel on the screen before them, the symbols foreign yet oddly symmetrical, hinting at a language of logic and complexity. Lieutenant Granger leaned in, his focus intense. "It's a mathematical language, General. They're using prime number sequences as a basis. This isn't just communication. It's a demonstration of intelligence." As the crew dissected the information, the scent of overheated processors filled the room, a subtle reminder of the strain under which they operated. Each officer's breath seemed to hang in the air, their minds as focused on the unfolding mystery as their eyes were on their screens. "Respond in kind," Blake decided, his decision slicing through the uncertainty. Mirror their sequence, add our own data set. Let's see if this is a bridge or a battleground. With a cautious optimism, the fleet transmitted their reply, a series of encoded light pulses designed to mimic the aliens' method. The two fleets, alien and human, now stood in a bizarre dialogue, exchanging ideas before potentially exchanging fire. As they awaited a response, the soft vibration of the ship's life support systems provided a constant reminder of the delicate balance between chaos and order aboard the vessel. The taste of stale coffee lingered on tongues too preoccupied to notice, and the warmth of the recycled air contrasted sharply with the cold logic of their interstellar chess game. Suddenly, the alien crafts adjusted their formation, aligning into what appeared to be a non-aggressive configuration. The message that followed was simpler, clearer. Coordinates to a location deep within the nebula, accompanied by a single repeating symbol that suggested a meeting or a parley. Blake felt a chill run through him, not from the air conditioning, but from the realization of the crossroads at which they now stood. "Prepare a team. Looks like we're going on a little trip," he told his crew, his voice steady but his mind racing with possibilities. As the crew members nodded and set to work, the stars outside seemed to watch in silent anticipation, their twinkling like the eyes of a universe aware of its unfolding drama. The mystery deepened, pulling Blake and his fleet further into the nebula's embrace, where light and truth mingled with shadows and questions. Guided by the enigmatic coordinates received from the alien fleet, General Carter Blake authorized a small, agile team to venture deeper into the heart of the Kitaro Nebula. The atmosphere in the briefing room was dense with anticipation and a trace of foreboding as the selected crew members reviewed their mission parameters under the subdued lighting. Lieutenant Granger led the team, his senses sharpened by the gravity of their task. They boarded the scout ship, a vessel designed for stealth and quick maneuvers, its surface matte and absorbing the dim light of the nebula, rather than reflecting it. As the ship detached from the flagship and drifted into the nebula, the soft whir of its precision engines was barely perceptible, even to its occupants. The nebula around them was a living canvas, swirls of gas and dust painting abstract landscapes that seemed to pulse with hidden life. The silence of space was profound here, filled only by the occasional crackle of static, as the nebula interfered with their communications back to the fleet. "Keep your eyes peeled and your scanners wide," Granger instructed, his voice low but clear over the ship's internal comm system. Each crew member nodded, their focus absolute, their hands steady on controls that felt unusually cold to the touch due to the nebula's influence on the ship's external temperature. As they penetrated deeper into the nebula, a faint glow began to illuminate their path, a phosphorescent shimmer that seemed almost liquid in its motion. It was eerily beautiful, casting a soft light over the faces of the crew, reflecting in their wide, alert eyes. The taste of recycled air grew tangy, mingling with the faintest hint of ozone seeping from the ship's high-energy shields, strained by the nebula's volatile particles. Suddenly, the scout ship's sensors pinged softly, signaling a proximity alert. Before them, shrouded in the nebular mist, loomed a structure of immense size and complexity. It was unlike anything human engineers had designed, a station carved out of an asteroid, its surfaces smooth and undulating, blending almost organically with its surroundings. "Looks like we're expected," Granger murmured, his gaze locked on the structure. The ship approached cautiously, docking protocols engaged automatically by a system that seemed eerily anticipatory of their technology. Once docked, the team disembarked into a corridor that hummed with a strange rhythmic pulse. Not a sound, really, but a vibration that they felt through the soles of their boots and in their chests. The air inside the station was cool and fresh, a stark contrast to their expectations, and smelled faintly of something mineral, like freshly cut quartz. The corridor led them to a large chamber where the source of the invitation awaited. They were not met with hostility, but with an eerie silence that filled the expansive space. Figures emerged from the shadows, their forms distinctly non-human, their movements fluid and graceful. Each alien was slender, their skin translucent, revealing the faint luminescence of their circulatory systems. "We come in peace," Granger started, speaking slowly, his voice echoing slightly in the vast chamber. The aliens responded not with words but with a projection of images directly into the minds of the team, a communication method that was both invasive and intimate. The images were rich with information about the nebula, the galaxy, and a silent plea for assistance against a common yet unseen threat. The mystery deepened, weaving the human team into a tapestry of cosmic intrigue that promised revelations and perhaps alliances formed in the shadow of impending conflict. In the echoing chamber of the alien station, the projected images continued to unfold, revealing scenes of interstellar conflicts and alliances, like pieces of a cosmic puzzle snapping into place with startling clarity. Lieutenant Granger and his team watched, transfixed, as the story of an ancient threat loomed into view, a force capable of extinguishing stars and devouring planets. As the silent narrative progressed, the chamber was suffused with a pale light, casting long shadows behind the human visitors. The air was crisp, each breath tasting slightly of the sterile, mineral-rich atmosphere of the station, tinged with a subtle hint of something organic, almost like the aftertaste of seaweed on a windy shore. "Ask them what they need from us," Granger signaled to his communications officer, who nodded and turned to the alien beings, attempting to mimic the gesture they had used to initiate the telepathic exchange. The aliens responded, their luminous bodies pulsating gently, a rhythm that seemed to echo the beating of hearts, or perhaps the throbbing pulse of the nebula itself. The reply was not in images this time, but in a direct emotional transmission, a sense of urgent need mixed with a profound fear of what was to come. It was a plea for help in a war that was not only about territory, but about survival against a darkness that devoured light and life. Feeling the weight of their new knowledge, Granger and his team returned to their scout ship, the atmosphere inside charged with a heavy sense of responsibility. As they undocked from the station, the cold metal of the ship's interior felt stark against the warmth of the alien chamber they had left behind. The ship's lights flickered slightly as they made their way out of the nebula, a reminder of the delicate balance of their own technology when faced with the ancient, advanced systems of the station. Back aboard the flagship, General Blake awaited them, his presence a silent question hanging in the air. Granger reported their findings, his voice steady despite the weight of the images still burning in his mind. "They're not just allies. They're bearers of warnings about the dark force encroaching on their, and potentially our realms," he explained. Blake's eyes narrowed, processing the strategic implications. "Prepare for a briefing with all squadron leaders within the hour. We need a solid plan to share this intelligence and to formulate a response that's both tactical and immediate." The preparations for the briefing were meticulous. The main conference room on the flagship buzzed with subdued activity as officers gathered, their uniforms a ripple of colors under the harsh lighting. The taste of strong, bitter coffee mingled with the tang of anticipation as they discussed potential strategies, their voices a low murmur punctuated by the clink of mugs on the metal table. As the team assembled, the seriousness of their situation settled around them like a cloak. Every sensor on the ship was tuned to detect any change in the nebula's conditions, every screen displaying data that might hint at the movements of the dark force described by the aliens. The mystery deepened, binding them all to a fate they had yet to fully understand, each officer a link in the chain that stretched into the shadowy depths of space where unknown dangers awaited. The briefing would set the course for what was shaping up to be a battle not just for control, but for the very essence of light against darkness. With the gathered intelligence from the alien emissaries, the atmosphere aboard the flagship turned electric. The briefing room, often a place of stern faces and strategic discussions, transformed into a nexus of urgent activity. General Blake stood at the head of the table where holographic images of the nebula spun slowly, casting ghostly lights across the intent faces of squadron leaders. "Here's what we know," Blake began, his voice cutting through the murmur of conversations. "The threat we face consumes stars, altering the fabric of space itself, leaving cold voids in its wake. It's no natural phenomenon but a weaponized force, advancing systematically toward populated star systems." The officers absorbed the gravity of his words, the air heavy with the metallic tang of the ship's life support systems working overtime to filter and recirculate the atmosphere. The distant, usually inaudible whine of the air recyclers became a soft backdrop to the weighty silence that followed Blake's briefing. Commander Larson, the fleet's chief tactician, tapped the hologram, bringing up strategic points along the nebula's boundary. "Our best chance is to intercept here and here," he pointed, indicating the narrow passages in the nebula that could function as choke points. "These natural corridors can amplify our defensive capabilities, funneling the enemy into our fire." Lieutenant Granger, recently returned from the alien station, chimed in with a measured tone. "The Allies have provided us with coordinates to their technology caches. These could bolster our defenses significantly." His statement brought a flicker of hope, a brief spark in the dim lighting of the conference room. As plans crystallized, the scent of freshly dispensed coffee mingled with the undercurrent of ozone, silent testament to the energy shields being tested in the hangar decks below. Each sip of the bitter brew grounded the officers back to the moment, back to the immediacy of their mission. "We need a volunteer force," Blake continued, his gaze sweeping across the room, "to deploy stealth probes into these corridors. They'll gather final recon data and lay down early warning systems." His request was met with a series of nods, the subtle clink of metals and insignia accompanying the shifts of those ready to step forward. The room buzzed with the low sound of tactical data being exchanged, officers coordinating movements, fleet formations, and potential evacuation routes for civilian populations. The strategy was set into motion with the precision of a well-oiled machine, each officer playing their part in the greater design. As the meeting adjourned, the squadron leaders dispersed, the echo of their boots on the metal floor a sharp tattoo against the soft hiss of the closing doors. General Blake remained, staring at the holograms, the shifting lights reflecting in his thoughtful gaze. He knew that the coming battle was not just a test of military prowess, but of humanity's ability to unite against a common, enigmatic enemy. The ship, a silent behemoth of metal and might, coursed through the darkness, its path illuminated by the dim stars of a nebula that had seen eons pass by. Each officer, each crew member, knew the stakes, knew that what lay ahead was uncertain, a mystery wrapped in the shroud of cosmic dust and starlight. The battle to come would define not just the future of their own species, but potentially that of the galaxy itself. As the fleet maneuvered into position within the nebula's twisting corridors, the stark, silent expanse of space bore witness to humanity's resolve. General Blake observed from the command deck, the soft glow of tactical displays illuminating his focused expression. The nebula outside offered a deceptive calm, its swirling gases shimmering with an almost hypnotic beauty that belied the danger lurking within. "Deploy stealth probes," Blake ordered crisply, his voice resonant in the quiet of the bridge. The crew executed the command with precision, releasing small, sleek drones that disappeared into the nebula's dense folds. The faint sound of the probe's launch was swallowed by the vastness of space, leaving only the slight vibration of the ship's deck underfoot as a reminder of their movement. The anticipation aboard the ship was palpable, the air charged with an electric expectancy. Officers moved about their duties with quiet efficiency, their expressions taut with concentration. The taste of strong black coffee lingered on their tongues, a bitter reminder of the long hours ahead. The scent of cold metal filled the bridge, a constant in the sterile environment of the ship. In the tactical room, Commander Larson monitored the probe's progress, his eyes darting across screens that flickered with incoming data. "We're picking up anomalies in the nebula's Sector 7, he reported, his tone tinged with the tension of uncertainty. "The readings are inconsistent with known natural phenomena." General Blake leaned over the display, his gaze sharp. "Could be their technology at work or something else." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. The possibility of encountering the nebula's hidden secrets, or the enemy's advanced technology, added a layer of complexity to their mission. Meanwhile, in the engineering bay, the team worked to integrate alien technology salvaged from the coordinates provided by their new allies. The devices were enigmatic, their surfaces smooth and cold to the touch, emanating a faint luminescence that pulsed rhythmically. The engineers, guided by faint whispers of alien logic translated into human understanding, adapted the systems for human use. This should give the shields a boost and increase the efficiency of our energy weapons, one engineer explained, his voice a mix of hope and determination. Back on the bridge, Blake received a report from a scout team. "Sir, we've encountered a field of debris. It's structured, almost like a minefield." The scout's voice crackled over the comm. The revelation brought a new wave of adrenaline to the bridge crew. Structured debris fields could mean a strategic defense or a trap. "Navigate carefully. Map it out and find a path through," Blake directed, his command firm against the backdrop of rising stakes. The crew acknowledged, their movements deliberate as they plotted coordinates and calculated safe passage through the potential minefield. As the fleet edged forward, the shadows within the nebula deepened, casting a pall over the luminous gases. The mystery of what lay ahead kept the crew on edge, each member aware that the success of their mission hinged on navigating not just physical dangers, but the unknown machinations of an unseen foe. With the galaxy itself seeming to hold its breath, the fleet continued its cautious advance, each ship a beacon of resolve in the enveloping darkness, moving deeper into the heart of the nebula where secrets and strategies awaited discovery. As the fleet inched through the structured debris field, the silence of space seemed to press against the hull of General Blake's flagship, a palpable tension that crept through the corridors and settled in every crew member's chest. The visual scanners painted a haunting image of the debris ahead, fragmented remnants of unknown vessels, their origins a mystery, floating like specters waiting in the dim starlight. "Steady," Blake murmured, his eyes locked on the forward screen where the debris spun slowly, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. Each piece told a story of a skirmish, a silent battle fought in this very corridor of space, the outcomes recorded only in the scars left on twisted metal. The ship's navigator, a seasoned officer with nerves steeled by countless encounters, guided the vessel with meticulous care. The taste of apprehension was palpable, like the tang of iron in the air, a byproduct of the ship's life support systems working overtime to maintain a semblance of Earth-normal environment under these extraordinary circumstances. Suddenly, a sharp ping from the navigation console cut through the quiet. "Proximity alert!" the navigator called out, his voice a sharp crack in the previously muted soundscape. On the screen, one of the debris pieces, a metallic shard about twice the size of their ship, had shifted its trajectory, heading straight for them. "Engage lateral thrusters. Evasive maneuvers now," Blake commanded. The response was immediate. The ship lurched sideways, a motion felt more than heard, the gravity compensators barely keeping up, sending a ripple of disorientation through the crew. Their stomachs churned as the view outside tilted, the stars streaking across the viewport in a dizzying dance. In the engine room, the sudden demand on the thrusters sent temperatures soaring, the air filling with the sharp scent of overheating circuits. Engineers scrambled, their hands moving over controls slick with sweat, their efforts a ballet of urgent precision to keep the ship's vital systems from overheating. Meanwhile, back on the bridge, the threat was not over. The debris field seemed to react to their presence, more pieces altering their paths, as if guided by some unseen force. "It's like a minefield, but intelligent," Commander Larson observed, his tone a mix of awe and horror. "Or we're being herded," Blake added grimly, the possibility hanging between them like a specter. Without warning, a bright flash illuminated the nebula, a beacon from one of their scout ships signaling distress. "Sir, Scout 3 has encountered something. They've lost main propulsion," reported a communications officer, her voice strained with urgency. Blake's jaw tightened. "Get us there now. All available power to engines." His order was punctuated by the clank of magnetic boots on the metal deck as the crew hastened to obey, the ship's atmosphere thick with the metallic taste of fear and the acrid bite of determination. As the flagship raced towards the distressed scout, the mystery of the nebula deepened, a reminder that in the vast expanse of space, not all threats were straightforward or even visible. The nebula, with its beautiful yet haunting visage, held secrets that could turn the tide of their mission, for better or for worse. Racing toward the distress signal, the flagship's hull groaned under the strain as it sliced through the dense nebular gases, their ghostly tendrils swirling around the ship like spectral fingers. The visual feeds from the scout ship were intermittent, flashing between static and brief glimpses of chaos, showing crew members struggling to stabilize their vessel amidst a backdrop of flashing warning lights and spinning debris. "Visual on Scout 3, announced the navigation officer, his voice tense as he maximized the feed on the main screen. The scout ship appeared battered, its hull pockmarked from collisions with the faster-moving debris, the damage a testament to the nebula's hidden ferocity. General Blake watched, his brow furrowed, as the scene unfolded. "Prepare for rescue operations. Launch the grappling drones," he ordered, his voice steady despite the rolling knot of apprehension in his stomach. The scent of overheated electronics filled the bridge, a sharp reminder of the ship's strained systems. Outside, the rescue drones deployed with a soft whoosh, their small forms darting through space with agile precision. The crew of the flagship felt the ship vibrate faintly under their feet, a subtle but constant reminder of the power being diverted to the rescue efforts. As the drones approached the crippled scout, a sudden burst of light from within the nebula illuminated the debris field in a stark, eerie glow. "What was that?" Blake snapped, his eyes narrowing at the new light source. "Analyzing now," replied the science officer, her fingers flying over her console as she adjusted the sensors to hone in on the anomaly. The light did not flicker or fade, but instead grew steadily, a beacon in the gloom of the nebula. "It's not just light, sir. There's a massive energy spike coming from that direction," she reported, her voice a mixture of awe and concern. The data streamed in, the readings spiking in ways that made little sense with their current understanding of nebular phenomena. Blake considered the implications. Could this be related to the dark force the aliens warned us about? He mused aloud, turning to look at his crew. Their faces were a mix of fatigue and resolve, the earlier ambient sounds of the ship now drowned out by the high stakes unfolding before them. "Potentially, sir. If that's the case, we need to reassess our position immediately," the tactician interjected, his analysis punctuated by the soft clinks of his metals against the console as he leaned forward. "Maintain our course to the scout. Keep monitoring that energy source, and be ready to adjust tactics at a moment's notice," Blake decided, his decision cutting through the tension like a laser through the nebula's haze. The flagship continued its approach, the metal of the hull cooling slightly as they moved deeper into the nebula's heart, where shadows played across the stars and hidden dangers lurked. The mystery of the nebula deepened with every passing moment, promising revelations that could either doom or save them all. The crew, surrounded by the soft vibrations of the ship at full alert, braced for what lay ahead, their senses sharpened by the looming threat and the ever-present unknown. As the flagship approached the crippled scout ship within the nebula, the plan for extraction and defense crystallized under General Blake's command. "Prepare all units for a synchronized extraction and cover operation. I want those men out safely and our data intact," he directed with authority, his eyes scanning the gathered officers on the bridge. The tactical officer, Commander Larson, initiated the strategy with crisp efficiency. "Activating drones for a perimeter sweep. Defensive units, stand by for potential hostiles. Engineering, ensure all systems are optimal for a quick exit." The orders were met with nods and the subtle rustling of uniforms as the crew prepared for action. On the main screen, the visuals from the scout ship were clearer now, showing the team inside battling to keep systems running amid sparks and the creaking protests of stressed metal. Outside, the rescue drones worked with precision, their grappling arms extending to secure the damaged vessel. The navigator, hands steady despite the high stakes, plotted a careful course that would allow the flagship to shield the scout from the larger debris. His console emitted a soft beep, the only sound in the otherwise focused silence that filled the bridge as he expertly maneuvered the ship into position. The engineering team, monitoring the ship's core systems, adjusted the energy distribution, ensuring maximum efficiency. The warmth from the consoles contrasted with the cold, clinical air circulating through the bridge, carrying a faint metallic edge, a reminder of the ship's hard-working heart. "Extraction in progress. reported the communications officer, her voice a beacon of calm in the tense atmosphere. On screen, the drones had attached securely to the scout ship and were now retracting their cables to pull it closer to the flagship's hangar bay. Suddenly, the science officer spoke up. "Sir, the energy spike, it's increasing, directly correlated with our extraction efforts. It appears we are triggering some sort of defense mechanism within the nebula." Her revelation sent a ripple of urgency through the crew. Blake's response was immediate. "Analysis, now. We need to understand this before it understands us. Larson, prepare a defensive barrage, but hold fire. Let's not provoke further without cause." As the team worked to decode the mysterious energy patterns, the flagship's hangar bay doors opened slowly, swallowing the scout ship whole. The operation was a delicate ballet of power and precision, underlined by the potential threat of the unknown force lurking within the nebula. With the scout now safely aboard, Blake turned to his crew, their faces illuminated by the soft light of relief that followed the successful rescue. "Well done, but stay alert. We're not out of the shadows yet. Let's figure out what this nebula is guarding so fiercely." The final part of their plan involved detailed analysis of the data collected during the operation, integrating it with the alien technology they had on board. "If this nebula is a defense mechanism," Blake pondered aloud, "then it's protecting something, or hiding it. We find out what. We find out why." The strategy meeting that followed was a mix of high-tech forensics and old-school military tactics. The bridge a storm center of activity, as every available piece of data was turned over, looking for the key to unlock the nebula's secrets. This planning was not just about immediate survival, but understanding a cosmic puzzle that could dictate the future of not just the fleet, but perhaps all of humanity. In the aftermath of the successful rescue and amid ongoing analyses of the nebular phenomena, General Blake convened a strategic meeting to formulate their next move. The conference room aboard the flagship buzzed with low, focused discussions as the leadership team huddled around digital displays, plotting courses and extrapolating data from the latest scans. "Here's the situation," Blake started, his voice firm and commanding attention. "The nebula's defensive mechanisms are not just passive barriers, but actively respond to intrusions. We need a strategy that acknowledges this intelligence and adapts to it." Commander Larson, his features set in a mask of concentration, tapped on a holographic map, where pulsating points marked observed energy spikes. "We could use these spikes to our advantage," he suggested. "If we can provoke targeted reactions, it might expose vulnerabilities in the nebula's defense network, or better yet, lead us to its power source." The suggestion sparked a series of rapid exchanges among the team, with technicians inputting scenarios into simulations, the screens flickering with potential outcomes. The room was filled with the sharp scent of hot electronics and the underlying earthy note of coffee, a stark reminder of the long hours ahead. Meanwhile, the engineering team worked to integrate alien technology into the flagship's systems, enhancing their capabilities. "We've successfully modified our energy shields with alien tech, which should give us a buffer against the nebula's harsher defensive measures," reported the chief engineer, her tone mixed with pride and cautious optimism. The tactile feedback from the new systems hummed through the deck plates, a subtle but reassuring sign of increased power. Blake nodded, absorbing the information. "Good. Let's use that. We'll initiate a series of controlled engagements with the nebula, using the spikes as beacons to guide our approach. Each unit will need to be precise. This is a dance, not a brawl." As the plan took shape, the team's strategy emphasized stealth and precision. Drone units were programmed for minimal energy emission to glide silently through the nebula's charged environment, like shadows slipping through twilight. Instructions were relayed through whispers rather than shouts, maintaining the hushed, intense atmosphere of the planning session. "Coordinate with all squadron leaders. I want updates every 10 minutes, and I need real-time analytics on the responses we provoke," Blake instructed, his gaze sweeping the room, each officer reflecting a piece of his determination in their own eyes. The mission commenced under the cover of the nebula's luminescent gases, which painted the blackness of space in hues of ghostly green and violet. The fleet moved in a carefully choreographed sequence, each ship and drone playing its part in the unfolding strategy. As they penetrated deeper, the nebula reacted not with hostility, but with an intricate display of light and energy that was almost beautiful, like the auroras of Earth, but alive and reactive. Sensors picked up the patterns, translating them into data streams that were as much art as information. The operation reached its climax as they located a central node, a convergence of energy pathways within the nebula, pulsating with power. "This is it," Blake said, a note of triumph mingling with the tension. "All units, converge on this point. This is where we turn the tide." The payoff was immediate and dramatic. The node, once activated by their approach, began to unfold like a cosmic flower, revealing not a weapon or shield, but a gateway, an ancient construct older than any recorded civilization. Its purpose mysterious, inviting exploration, and perhaps offering new alliances or new battles. The nebula, once a barrier, now beckoned them deeper into its secrets, holding the promise of revelations that could change the course of the conflict, and perhaps the course of human history. As the gateway revealed by the nebula's core materialized before them, General Blake and his team stood at the brink of a discovery that defied their understanding of the universe. The structure, an intricate lattice of pulsating energy and metal, shimmered with a light that seemed to pulse in time with the very heartbeat of the cosmos. "This is what the nebula was protecting," Blake murmured, his voice filled with a mix of awe and resolution as he addressed his crew. "Not a weapon, but a bridge. A bridge to what or whom we're about to find out." The operations team, gathered around the command deck, watched in silence as the gateway began to activate, its panels illuminating one by one, casting ethereal lights across their determined faces. The air was thick with anticipation, the scent of ozone now replaced by a sharp electric tang that seemed to emanate from the gateway itself. Commander Larson stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the structure. "General, we've got movement on the other side. Something's coming through." His voice, usually calm and controlled, carried a hint of tension. All eyes turned to the view screen as shapes began to emerge from the luminous portal. First silhouettes, then distinct figures, beings of light and energy, their forms fluid and graceful, moving through the gateway with a purposeful grace. The crew of the flagship held their breath, witnessing what no human had ever seen before. Blake stepped closer to the communication panel, his presence commanding. "This is General Carter Blake of the Human Federation," he announced, his voice echoing through the bridge. "We come in peace and seek understanding." The beings responded not with words, but with a projection of thoughts and memories that filled the minds of Blake and his crew. Images of ancient galaxies, cosmic battles, and alliances long forgotten by time flooded their senses, a shared history of the universe that was both overwhelming and enlightening. "We've been guardians of this gateway, waiting for those who would seek to explore, not exploit," the lead being conveyed, their voice a harmonic vibration that resonated in the air. "Your actions have shown you are ready to learn what lies beyond." The dialogue, though not spoken, was as clear as if it had been shouted from the stars themselves. Blake, feeling the weight of history and possibility, responded with the gravitas it demanded. "We accept your guardianship and your invitation. Let this be the dawn of a new alliance, one that honors both our independence and our interdependence." As the agreement was forged, the crew around Blake felt a surge of pride and purpose. They were no longer merely explorers or warriors. They were pioneers of a new understanding, a bridge between the known and the unknown. The gateway stabilized, the light dimming to a gentle glow that seemed to beckon them forward. "Prepare to advance," Blake ordered, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Today, we go through as envoys of humanity, ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead, together with our new allies." As the flagship moved toward the gateway, passing through the shimmering portal, the stars beyond seemed to align in a silent salute. Humanity had not only responded with total war, but with total courage, total curiosity, and a total commitment to forging a future defined not by conflict, but by cooperation, a fitting tribute to a universe that was, at its core, inherently filled with wonder. As the flagship emerged from the gateway, a breathtaking panorama unfolded before the crew, a vibrant tapestry of star systems and civilizations previously beyond imagination. The ship drifted in a vast, silent sea of space, yet the atmosphere inside buzzed with the electrifying energy of discovery and triumph. General Blake stood at the forefront of the bridge, his eyes reflecting the cosmic majesty that stretched out before them. Beside him, his crew members, each one visibly moved by the gravity of their journey and its implications, looked on in awe. "We've crossed into what can only be described as a new frontier," Blake announced, his voice imbued with a mixture of reverence and resolve. "Here, in this confluence of galaxies, we stand not as conquerors, but as explorers and diplomats." The crew's response was a mixture of nods and solemn understanding, their usual brisk efficiency tempered by the momentousness of their achievement. The ship's communication officer relayed Blake's words across all decks, and a palpable sense of unity and pride swelled within the metal confines of the vessel. Commander Larson, turning from the viewport, addressed Blake. "Sir, the coalition of beings we've met, they've offered us a seat at the council. They want to learn from us as much as we have to learn from them." Blake nodded, a small smile breaking through his typically stoic demeanor. "Tell them we are honored and that we accept. Humanity has much to offer and much to gain." As they communicated their acceptance, a visual transmission from the council appeared on the main screen. Beings of light and energy, their forms flickering and shimmering, conveyed their welcome. "Together we will face the challenges of the cosmos, sharing knowledge and strength," one of them voiced. The tone not just heard but felt, a warm thrum that resonated gently through the ship's hull. The scene outside shifted as other ships, varied in design yet united in purpose, began to converge around Blake's flagship. The gathering was a silent testament to the new era they were ushering in, a symphony of interstellar cooperation set against the backdrop of the universe's boundless wonder. In this moment, General Blake reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from the shocking execution of a human diplomat to the discovery of a cosmic alliance. "Humanity responded with war," he mused aloud to his crew, "but it led us to something greater. We reached out with open hands, and in return, we've been welcomed into a community that spans the stars." As the ship settled into its new position among the Allied fleet, the vastness of space around them no longer seemed daunting or hostile, but inviting and ripe with potential. The nebula, once a barrier, now served as a luminous gateway to their future. "Let this be recorded," Blake concluded, his voice steady and clear. "Humanity did not just survive, we thrived. We faced the unknown with courage and curiosity, and today we stand not alone, but alongside new allies, as equals and friends in the galaxy." And with that, the flagship, a beacon of human ingenuity and resilience, drifted forward, its course set by the collective will of a united galaxy. Its mission no longer just exploration, but mutual flourishing. Here, in the boundless reaches of space, humanity had found its new horizon.